Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. But it's all tricks aside, because tonight we're turning the paranormal into the normal. Join me as we explore the gray areas of reality. We're going to talk all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and aliens, and see how it's all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association, and we are live. So if you're an experiencer yourself, or you're just plain nosy, be sure to send me your question and subscribe to the podcast. Now, get ready, because it's going to get deep. No, really, we're going to go way out there, because this is Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. What's happening, my paranormal junkies, and welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. I'm your host, comedy magician Danny Whitson, and boy, do we got a show for you guys tonight. First of all, let's say thank you for tuning in. Like I said, we got some really cool things happening in the UFO world. If you guys have not been over to the website, theexperiencersupport.org, our very own Ryan Stacy has some really cool articles out. Like right now, you can check out the Falcon Lake incident story of 1967, a really cool UFO encounter. Also, you can check out Stefan McCallick's, I believe I'm saying it right, Stefan McCallick's UFO encounter story. That's also on there. And then be sure to check out Ryan's latest investigation report about the Boeing 737 spotting mysterious lights over the skies of Canada. All those things you can go out and check out right now at theexperiencersupport.org. Our very own Ryan Stacy's very own report. Be sure to check that out. But I'm real excited about tonight's guest. This person, we're talking ghosts. We're talking haunts. We're talking haints. Yes. This person I've had the honor to know for a while. I've actually got to go check out one of the places that she actually owns and operates. She is a co-owner of the very haunted Scott County Jail here in Tennessee. And she's the lead investigator of her very own show on YouTube, The Ghost Biker. So let's welcome our very own Miranda Young.
Hey,
How you doing, Miranda?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you, Danny?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to see you again. It was a blast having you on my old podcast, The Abracadam. But I tell you what, as long as I didn't jack it up too much, go ahead and let the viewers know a little bit about you.
Absolutely. So of course, my name is Miranda. I'm better known as the Ghost Biker, and I travel around the country on my motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations, and I highlight them on my web series, Ghost Biker Explorations. I'm also co-owner of the historic Scott County Jail Museum. I created a company with my best friend and business partner, Dr. Christy Sumner from Soul Sisters Paranormal. The company's called History, Highways, and Haunts. And so together we co-own the historic Scott County Jail Museum and then historic Rugby After Dark tours and investigations.
You know, I was trying to remember the town that was in the other day when I was talking about it, because I just remember Scott County, but it's in Rugby, Tennessee, is where this place is located.
The jail's in Huntsville. Yeah.
Okay, the jail's in Huntsville. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Historic Rugby After Dark is our second location, and that's actually a partnership with Historic Rugby Inc. It's about 20 miles from the jail. So you can actually have a whole weekend. You can come and investigate the jail and then also Historic Rugby.
Okay, that's super cool.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I tell you, we definitely want to talk about that. I want to talk about the jail, but first, let's talk about the show. You've been doing this show for how many years now? How many seasons?
We just finished season 6 and going into season 7 this year. So,
gosh, that is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, I think you and I met maybe I was in season 3, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Gosh, that's crazy. And that's that's the way to grind it too. And I think it's a really cool show because I mean it's you on your bike and you go to these locations, and I mean it's it's not cluttered up with a bunch of other stuff like some of your other paranormal shows.
Yeah. I mean, I like to keep it really simple with it. I like to keep the episodes relatively short, anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, just so that we can cover the history and then also cover the story as to why we're there and then the actual paranormal investigation. We did something a little bit different here with season 6, and we did all the episodes live, and it ended up being a huge hit doing it that way. I traveled to different places every week, and it was originally going to be 2-hour live where people could investigate and interact with me. And then I was going to be investigating 2 to 3 hours afterwards, and then re-releasing those episodes as produced episodes here this year, either in February or March. Probably looking like it's more going to be March. But that was a really cool way to do it, because by the end of the season, I mean, we were having over 300 people live on the show interacting and doing these investigations with me, which was something that was really kind of unexpected, but it was a great turn. And a lot of these locations, it worked really good for to promote the tourism and to promote the location itself, because each of the locations that I highlighted here in season 6 were either locations that either had never been investigated before or had only been investigated a handful of times, and they were either museums, historic home places, or historic villages. And so it really gave the opportunity to get these locations out there to a different market that maybe had never heard of the locations before.
And, also, like, there's a lot of people that would love to go on a paranormal investigation that maybe are not able to do so. And this, by you doing this live, this gives them an opportunity to kind of experience what it's like going on a real investigation.
Yeah. So I've been investigating a little over 12 years, and I started out with a team, and I started out really doing a lot of lives. They were really a big hit. And so this would have been way early on, before lives, way before TikTok, way before things like that became more mainstream. And then when I branched off to do solo investigating and do ghost biker explorations, it was one of those things. I would keep the locations confidential because they were going to be part of my season. And because I am solo and the episodes are self-produced and everything, it was something that would take me most of the year to get all of this together, because we put the episodes together like a produced show that you would see on Discovery or Travel or any of those channels. And so they were a big hit and people really wanted them. I would try to go on every now and then throughout the year and maybe do a live if I was working at an event or doing like an event investigation. But it really was kind of, the idea was born out of the fact that it's so extremely busy this year. I didn't have the time to travel to the locations, go through hours and hours of evidence, and then the hours that goes to putting the episodes together. It was really just kind of an idea to make sure that I still had a season. I really didn't anticipate it to be that successful. And I was honestly blown away, because I know one of the episodes we did the Kentucky Music Hall of Fame up there. And like I said, there was over 300 people on the live, and within a week, it had over 25,000 views just in a very short period of time. So,
gosh, wow.
So I think that the Ghost Biker seasons are going to change just a little bit to incorporate more lives, but because the produced episodes are such a big hit, we'll still continue with those. It'll just kind of maybe shift a little bit, and there'll be a lot more content that's coming out.
Now what part of Kentucky were you at? What town?
That one was in Rock Castle, Kentucky. So, okay. So southeastern Kentucky. We also did one in London, Kentucky.
People in Kentucky. I did a show in Kentucky, probably not that long ago, just a few weeks back ago. And I tell a joke on my show, a ghost hunting joke. And afterwards, this guy, they come up, people talk to you after the show, and the guy was like, "Hey, you guys really into the paranormal investigation, And I was like, "Well, yeah." I said, "Yeah, we try to go on them as much as we can. Well, you got to come to my house." He was trying to get stuff at his house. I'm like, "Well, wait a minute," but But he had the craziest stories. He was told me a really cool story. He saw this dark figure come in, and I mean, he was. You could tell this guy had seen something. So I was like, and they were telling me all about the places in Kentucky that are haunted, and I was like, this is really cool. I got to tell this bit more because I'm getting cool stories afterwards.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about Kentucky, so they really embrace their paranormal tourism, and I wish that was something that we did more here in Tennessee, because just here in East Tennessee, there are so many locations within a close radius of each other, with us, with the jail, the historic Rugby, the historic Harriman Hospital, Brushy Mountain Prison, all the way down into Chattanooga. And then, of course, if you get over into Middle Tennessee, you've got all those plantations and a lot of the Civil War areas. And so, but the cool thing about Kentucky is they actually have this initiative where they partner with their tourism commissions and the travel commissions there. And they have the, basically, it's like the Haunted Kentucky Passport. And it's really encouraging, and it's kind of helping these more rural areas to kind of capitalize on a different side of tourism. And it's really been successful for them. I know that I believe they've been doing this for 7 or 8 years, and it's starting to kind of migrate more over into the Eastern Kentucky area. And so we partner a lot with, I partner a lot with Kelly from the London Kentucky Tourism Commission, and now moving on up into Rockcastle. But Kentucky itself has so many stories with the Appalachian Triangle and Hellier, and the Paranormal Museum is there in Somerset, Kentucky. So a lot of stories come out from that area, and it's really cool to see that they're embracing this side of tourism that is something that they normally don't, a lot of places don't do. And so we're trying to do that with our company, History, Highways, and Haunts, and then with Ghost Biker itself, because that's how I tailor my episodes, is the history and the travel are first and foremost, and then the paranormal is just icing on the cake whenever you're able to get activity.
Now, you said Appalachian Triangle. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, but like with moonshine?
Well, a lot of these places, they tend to, to make it legit haunted, you got to add a triangle to it, with, you see that in Alaska, and, people always want to connect the dots. So yeah, it's right in that area. It's a high saturation of paranormal activity, cryptid activity, UFO activity. So high strangeness, very a lot of supernatural activity right in this one particular area, and a lot of it relates to the cave systems. Mammoth Cave being up there, but this is something that I'm looking at potentially highlighting in one of my future seasons that we're working on. Yeah, because it's really interesting, the high strangeness that you see in that particular area.
Well, I love it. So many cool episodes to watch on your show, on the Ghost Biker show. I have one in particular that I absolutely, that's a favorite. And I would love to go ahead and talk about it right now. Your investigation of the Brushy Mountain, penitentiary, you can go watch on YouTube now. But first of all, you stayed all night in this old prison, Brushy Mountain, abandoned, penitentiary, no longer, in service, but is still there standing. And it seems like it still has some prisoners in there too.
Still definitely does. Yeah.
And you stayed all night.
Yes. Brushy's one of my favorite places, because it's not too far from where I grew up. They actually took our senior class there to see it when when the prison was actually in operation. That would have been in 98. The jail did shut down, or prison. I have a jail. I keep wanting to call this a jail, but the prison actually shut down in 2009, and it's got such a interesting paranormal reputation. It was known as the end of the line. James Earl Ray was housed there. Essentially, the worst of the worst were housed in this prison. It's in the shape of a cross, and also one of the walls is made out of the mountain itself. And so, the terrain is very rugged. it's just a place. I mean, I definitely encourage people to go and visit there. Now it's open as a tourist destination where you can get moonshine. You can go in and take a tour, and you can even eat there. Now, I've investigated it on 6 occasions. 5 of those occasions were actually before the prison opened up to the public. And it was really interesting to see how the activity changed over time, from because we were one of the first couple of teams to go in there. And then, now hundreds of people have investigated Brushy. But on this particular occasion, I did highlight this episode in season 2, episode 1, called End of the Line. And it was part of a collaboration investigation with Soul Sisters Paranormal. But during that investigation, we did a flashback to the second time that I investigated there. And on that second time, I actually was part of a full weekend investigation. On Friday night, I investigated by myself. On Saturday night, it was over Easter weekend, so they invited about 6 or 7 of their favorite teams that had investigated already to come back and investigate that weekend. And so this would have been way before they opened. I think this was in 2016, I believe, when I spent the night there. But I was coming off of the full investigation by myself that night and decided I was going to sleep a little bit. It was my first time sleeping in a location. And so I decided I wanted to sleep in the hole. The hole is the solitary confinement area. And it's just like it sounds. Basically, you're down in a hole. These cells are completely dark. And so the people could be in there up to, 28 days. And if you're in a location where you're in complete darkness and, you don't have sound and all that sort of thing, you're kind of, when you come out, a lot of people have a hard time seeing, have a hard time functioning because you are in that sensory deprived state, if you will. It was said they always gave them 2 buckets, one to use the bathroom in and one for their food. And it was just a place you definitely, if you were inside of Brushy, you didn't want to be there. And so I laid down about 8:30 that morning, ended up sleeping for about 3.5 hours. And I got 3 minutes and 15 seconds of, in my opinion, some of my best best evidence that I've ever captured. Some of it is residual. Some of it is intelligent. And I do have to say, because, I think we're going to highlight that here in just a few minutes. There was no power at that point in time. Laundry is up on the 2nd floor above the hole. There was no power in there. No lights in the entire prison, or no power to have caused us to capture some of the things that we captured. That was truly residual stuff. I was the only person on the property, with the exception of my 2 friends who they're over the paranormal investigations there. And so they were actually asleep in the office at that time. And so, I got some of the best sleep that I had ever gotten in a location. And
Really?
I wasn't expecting that.
Easy there.
I did. I think I was
crazy.
Extremely tired from coming off of that investigation, and then knowing that I was going to be investigating that evening and also the entire night that was going to be coming up. But I feel like, and so that kind of started a trend. I will, if I get the opportunity, I will sleep at some of these locations, because I do feel like you're going into that vulnerable state and the spirits just interact different with it. So when you're in that state.
I have a hard time falling asleep in hotels. I couldn't imagine laying on a prison bed, bunk. And I've been there, man. It's not like a real tidy feeling place.
No. And at that time, like I said, there was no power. I think now they've got lights and got stuff in there, but there was no power. And I chose the bunk that I chose. It was the one that had the least feathers and bird bones on it. I remembered having a conversation as I was going through before I started investigating that night or the night before. And that Brushy has a lot of snakes. They've got rattlesnakes, and they've got a lot of snakes on the property. And so I remember walking through and seeing the grates, and my friend Tiffany was like, she looked down and there was bird bones in the grates, and she was like, "Oh, the snakes have been eating pretty good lately." And so I just remembered when I went in there, I had a little sleeping bag with a quilt, and so I picked the bunk that had the least crap on it. And I had my boots sitting in the floor, and I just remember when I laid down, I was like, I need to make sure I check my boots because I don't want to have a snake in those boots. But that was my biggest thought at the time. Now, if I would have heard some of what I captured in real time, I don't know if I would have slept as well, because
that's the thing. Because the stuff that you picked up, and I was amazed, because it wasn't just, it's stuff that went on in a prison, and it's crazy. Well, I tell you what, let's see if there's any way we can get a clip of that episode up here so everyone can check it out. I think that would be great if we could get that up.
Okay. And I'll play it, and then I'll talk about it after.
Gotcha. Let's check this out. This is actually you.
Yeah.
There we go.
Do I need to restart that a little bit?
Yeah, let's fast forward real quick because I want to hear the night.
Yeah, let me wind it up. I didn't realize it was so low.
Shoot.
And you can kind of hear me snoring too. Now, a couple things about that. So, like I said, the excuse me, there was no power. So, the laundry running upstairs was pretty significant. You would imagine that was 8:30 in the morning. I think that was maybe 2 hours in, so that would have been around 10.
And there's no laundry. There's no,
there's machines up there, but they don't work because there's no power. So to me, that would have been residual, something that would have probably been happening around that time. Also, I don't know for sure if that was a ball bouncing, but to me, it sounded like somebody for 5 minutes sitting there just bouncing a ball against the wall. And I was on a podcast talking about this, and it just so happened one of the people I was talking to was a former corrections officer at a different facility. And he was like, that actually makes a lot of sense because at that time period, that would have been a common thing that people would have, or that the prisons would have given to the inmates, because it was not something, a rubber ball was not something they could easily fashion into some type of contraband. Yeah. And so that was interesting. Of course, the talking back and forth, the not really gets me every time, because to me, that was intelligent. I mean, I hadn't been asleep. I think that was 20, 30 minutes into when I was sleeping. And whoever it was, I don't know if they were curious about me being there or if it was one of those where they're like, just wait, but between
the help me got me. I was like, when I help me, you can clearly hear that.
You hear two of them. Yeah. God. And I definitely encourage anybody, if you couldn't hear that, to go back and listen to it with headphones, because you really get the gravity of just how clear some of these voices are. And, they fit with the conversation. They fit with the situation going on. They even fit with any type of residual activity that could have been happening as well. So at that time, basically what I had done is I put cameras up while I slept, and also had the recorder sitting out. And honestly, I was really amazed whenever I went back to review the evidence. I was honestly kind of dumbfounded by the extent of it.
Let me ask you your opinion about this, because like I said, you've been to a lot of places, you've done a lot of investigations. I've often wondered about this, because it seems like most of your investigations where people go to investigate, it's always taken place somewhere where something tragic, or it's been dark, depressing, something, happened there. And that's why there's a lot of high activity versus, what if, Disneyland is haunted, or Disney World?
I've heard it is.
Well, when you go there though, or do you hear like everyone having a good time, or riding Space Mountain? You know what I mean? Why is it always got to be somewhere, shitty, where something happened?
Well, it's not always. And that's what's interesting is, one of the things that people started to notice whenever we were home during the pandemic was people started to experience a lot of activity in their homes. Now, granted, there was a lot of crazy things happening during the pandemic that could trigger this, but I believe one of the big things was the fact that we were all home, and we were all stopping, and we were all paying attention. And so, in these homes, not all the time, something's not always bad happened in, these homes. Now, a good example of this is historic rugby. There was nothing extremely tragic that happened there. There was a tragic incident that happened at the Tabard Inn. The Tabard Inn also burned twice. So there's that. But most of the homes there inside Rugby, whether they're being lived in now or whether they're part of the museum village that you can go in, have had a lot of activity in it. We believe in that instance, because of the way the village was set up as a utopian society and almost as an escape or a new colony, if you will, from England. We believe in that instance that it's because the spirits are staying in a place where they're happiest. Now, that's not always the case. But if you believe in like a deposit of energy and such, it could be positive or negative energy that is staying within a location, especially when you're dealing with residual activity. Which is, if people aren't familiar with that, which would be activity that's almost like the stone tape theory, or an action that just continues to play over time around a certain time, certain date, that sort of thing. So it's not always negative, but it does, or not, I don't want to say negative, but where intense or potentially negative situations have happened. It's not always like that, but that does tend to have the greater concentration of activity. But to what you're saying, I have heard that that Disneyland and Disney World is quite haunted.
Well, I tell you what, we got our first question here popped up here, by Thirsty Tom. Miranda,
Hey.
what focal lengths do you use in the field when filming? Any favorites?
I wouldn't say that I have any favorites because I use such a variety of cameras, and it really it depends on whether it's me filming vlog style with just myself, or if I have my videographer with me. I use everything from drone cameras to like the one that I just had, and that was a stationary camera. I couldn't change a focal length, so I don't really have a favorite because I use such a variety, and it really depends on the location I'm at, that as to whether I'm filming, because I'm not so much now B-roll. That's when I'm filming more beauty shots and that sort of thing. But for me, I do a lot of raw filming. So it's about that moment and trying to capture more so than trying to, get the beauty shots and that sort of thing. If that makes sense. I guess what I'm saying is I really don't have a favorite because I use so many different cameras, and some of them don't give me the option to change my focal lengths.
Cool. Now, that video in particular,
Mhm.
like I said, you didn't hear anything like that live while you were sleeping or anything. Nothing woke you up?
No, there was a couple times that I woke up but didn't know why I woke up. It was quite a restful sleep other than kind of tossing and turning, because once I got in, because those beds were very narrow. So once I got in and went to sleep, there was a couple times that I never felt anything touch me or anything really loud. That now there were some loud bangs, but going back, I never really heard anything to just direct me to like sit up or be startled. It was mostly just kind of wake up from the sleep.
As an investigator, when you got back home and you listened to those EVPs and the thought, my God, that's what was going on while I was asleep. I mean, that had to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. I mean, that was, I can only imagine how creepy that was.
It really was, because a lot of the time when I'm editing and, and working and going through evidence. So sometimes I'm sitting at work, because I used to work in corporate before I got into the museum business. But I would sit and work on graphic design, work on marketing, and listen to my audio. And normally I would listen to my audio because I always have an audio recorder. Even if my camera picks up audio, I always have a static audio recorder with it and link that with the video, because sometimes some of the camera options are just not as crisp with the audio as my recorders are. And so usually a lot of the time I'll listen to the audio first before I sit and go through, and then I'm able to go back and check myself with the camera to see if it picked up as well. But I remember on that particular one, I was actually sitting in my corporate office working. And as soon as I hear this, I'm like calling several people. I had some designers that worked under me. I'm calling them in and I'm like, okay, I need you to listen to this and tell me what you hear. I'm not going to tell you what I hear and what I'm experiencing or what I'm doing, but I want you to listen to this and tell me if you hear this. And we were I think work ceased for about an hour that day, because I was just so thrilled and excited about it. And then the gravity kind of hits you of like, wait a minute, we actually captured this, and what was happening in that moment while I was in there sleeping. Other times I'm sitting in my house at midnight listening to audio and watching video, and it can get a little creepy when that happens.
especially where you're at now, because you've got a beautiful old home, and there's even a graveyard on your land, which suits you perfectly, by the way.
It does. It does. I'm able to work with my dowsing rods to kind of, dowsing rods can do a lot of things. They can determine where bodies are buried, determine the sex of the bodies, that sort of thing. There's a lot they can do, and I am a novice at that, but I know that Dr. Bass out of UT there is,
Absolutely, Dr. Bass.
yes. He's one of the pioneers, I guess. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time, but he's been one of them that's really brought it to the forefront in educating people. And it's something I want to learn more about, because I've always had a lot of luck with the dowsing rods. And so there's a lot of people who are buried there that the stones have been moved. And so I'm able to go up there and kind of test that to see if that works, and kind of get better with my abilities with that.
Okay, so I got to ask this real quick. Okay, first of all, if my wife's watching, when she watches this episode, she's going to give me hell, because she uses she's used the dowsing rods, and I've made fun of her. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? But I didn't know. First of all, I'm honored. I had the honor to do a show in a cave with Dr. Bass when he was doing those presentations.
Oh.
I got to do a show opening for Dr. Bass before he did one of his presentations. But in case the viewers don't know who Dr. Bass is, he was one of he was the founder of the Body Farm at the University of Tennessee, to where they could study corpses. So basically, there's a spot at the University of Tennessee, guys, to where bodies are just kind of laying out all day.
It's the only one, I believe, in the country. Yeah.
I believe it is the only one in the country. Yeah. And also, he's wrote some very fantastic books. Dr. Bass has. Google him, check him out. It's really good stuff. Dr. Bass is a sweetheart of a man. Pleasure to know him. But Dr. Bass is a fan of the dowsing rods.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And if Dr. Bass is, damn, I'm gonna have to give it another look now.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's Dr. Bass that does a lot with the dowsing rods and speaks on those. My mind is drawing a blank right now on the other gentleman, but yeah, dowsing rods.
You've had luck with them too, though. You've had luck with them.
Oh yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay, I will. Like I said, Antoinette, she's like, it works, and I'm like, shut up, woman, no, it don't. She's like, it works.
Well, they definitely work for finding water, and interestingly enough, so the farmhouse I live in, it was my grandparents' farmhouse, and my papa, he grew up here, was built in 1902. And the land has been in the family for a long time, and so the house, before I remodeled it and moved back up here, no one had lived in it for about, at that point in time, about 15, 16 years. And so on a whim, I was supposed to go investigate a residential case with my friend Tiffany, and something happened. We weren't able to do that. And my mom just kind of was like, well, if you're wanting to just go investigate, why don't you go investigate over at the farmhouse? And so we were like, why not? And now I do know my papa did pass away here. There have been a couple deaths here, but it's all family, and it was all, nothing negative or anything had ever happened here. All good memories. And so I wasn't really expecting anything to happen, but I'd set my equipment out. And of course, I always start my recorder before I do any investigating, just to see, because a lot of the time things happen before we actively investigate. And I had the ovilus sitting out too, and I only got 2 words the whole time that I was investigating here. And the first word that it said was Sam. And my great-grandfather's name was Samuel Oscar, and my great-great-grandfather's name was Sam Lawson. And they are both buried up in the cemetery up there. And so cool. That was the only words we got. And this was an Ovilus 5. This was independent of a phone. It was just an Ovilus 5. And then the other thing, when I was unpacking, and this was as I was unpacking everything, that it said this, or the first word, And so I pull my dowsing rods out and set them on the table. And as soon as I set those on the table, I got the word water. And to me, that made me giddy because that's what the folks who lived here on the farm would have used those rods for, or any spirit from that era. I know there are 2 natural springs here on the property, and so they would have used those rods to find that. And they wouldn't have used them for anything themselves for anything other than that. So they knew. It's like I'm sitting all this equipment out, and they're probably thinking, what is this? And then I set that out, and it's like, oh, water. So to me, it's nothing creepy, nothing scary. That was something that just actually really excited me, because it proved that, to me, the obelisk there was not just spitting out mumbo jumbo at that point. I was able to correlate both of those items with something. I was really able to test that. And then also just that activity doesn't always have to be creepy. You can get a lot of really intelligent and some things that you can kind of back up scientifically just through these investigations.
Now, although I know, like, that being well, here we got a question real quick we can grab from Lisa. How do you spell his name so I can look him up? Are you talking Dr. Bass? I believe it's just as it sounds, just BASS.
Yeah.
You could just Google Dr. Bass, and even University of Tennessee. It'll kind of give you more about the body farm, which that's like I said, that's a whole new cool thing to check out on its own.
Yeah.
Dr. Bass, a very interesting guy. Definitely look him up. Very interesting. Miranda, I've always like I said, it's different with your place. Like you said, it was kind of like your grandfather's and stuff. But I've always heard never go and do an investigation at your own place. I've always heard never.
And that's what I tell people whenever when people reach out. I don't do nearly as many residentials as I used to. And, because it's its own different beast. And, I always tell them, it's like, are you sure you want me or someone to come to your house? Because you're the one that has to sleep there. And sometimes we see, hear, and get things that you can't see and unhear. And you remember that when you go to lay down at night. Most of the time when people have asked me to come in, it's been mostly to either try to validate that they're not crazy, or also that they are, maybe there's a logical explanation for what they're experiencing. I have, of course, at that time, I didn't realize I would be moving in here, but interestingly enough, the contractor that I was using on some of the remodel, he wouldn't stay late. And he did ask me by the time he was getting done with things, because being a house from the early 1900s, nothing's square, nothing is level. And he asked me, he said, has anyone ever passed in here? Or have you ever had any activity? And I'm like, oh, there's spirits here. And he's like, yeah, he said, I realized that because when I was going in there working and would start cussing the work and stuff that was done a long time ago that I was having to work with, things would start happening. And he never really expanded too much on it. But of course, I've had a few odd things happen, but nothing ever creepy because it's family. But now in my old house, I did.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this, Brandon. Let's do this. I tell you what, I want to pick back up on that. Also, I want to talk about the Scott County Jail. Yes. I had my own experience when I was there, but I tell you what, let's get over here to our sponsor. Let's get a quick message on this commercial break. When we come back, let's talk about the jail.
Yes.
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today.
It's your business. It's your property.
Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services.
Go to blacklightiss.com.
All right, we are back here with the ghost biker herself, Miranda Young. Miranda, okay. Now we had talked about your show, the Ghost Biker, the one on YouTube. People can go catch a lot of really cool episodes right now. But you also you're co-owner of the Scott County Jail in Huntsville, Tennessee, to where people come and do tours, and have their own paranormal experience, like I had when we were there. But I would love to let's talk about that now. Let's talk about what got you interested in doing this and what got you interested in the jail itself. A little bit of history about the jail.
Sure. So, in 2020, I ended up leaving corporate, and because I had a successful marketing career before I moved into museum ownership, and so I ended up leaving corporate and was looking for an opportunity to move back closer to my family here in Scott County or in the Huntsville, Tennessee area, and so I do haunted motorcycle tour rides and such. And so my business partner, Christy, she helps me out with those sometimes on occasion. And
Hello, Christy.
we were looking to maybe do some type of haunted motorcycle ride that used the jail as a stop. And so I knew the jail, it had closed in 2008. And I wasn't really sure. I knew they had got a tourism grant for it, but I wasn't sure what they were doing with it. Through one of the executives over here, I found out that it wasn't being used as for anything. And so I ended up reaching out to Christy and saying, hey, would you be interested in approaching the town with me and seeing if we could open up the museum or the jail as either a true crime museum and a paranormal research center, or both, And so we sat down, we came up with a plan as to what we wanted to do. We knew we didn't want to just open it up for paranormal investigations. We wanted to make it accessible to the community and share this history, because there's so much history associated with this jail. And so we reached out to the town mayor and presented our idea, had a full business plan on there, and presented it to him as well as to the alderman. They loved the idea. And so in September of 2021, we opened it up during the day as a true crime museum, and then during the evening for after dark tours and private paranormal investigations. And so we say we got something for everybody, because we've got the flashlight tours for the paranormal enthusiasts and the history buffs, but then the guided ghost hunts for people who want something a little more immersive, and they can go in and they can do a 3-hour guided ghost hunt with myself and my business partner. And then also for those that are looking for maybe they've got a team, maybe they're more experienced, they can rent the jail out till certain time in the night. We don't allow people to sleep there, but they can come in and they can do a private paranormal investigation. A little bit of history about the jail. It was built in 1904 and in operation until 2008. And it's built like a little castle. So it's a little castle here in the mountains of East Tennessee. And most of the inmates that were in there early on, from the early 1900s up until about the 60s, were typically moonshiners, ridge runners, that sort of thing. Moonshining was a really, really big thing here. It kept the prison doors or the jail doors going open all the time. But we've had everything from a sheriff that was killed at the front door. That was Sheriff R.D. Ellis, and he was actually shot ambush style at the front door, and that's still one of our unsolved murders. He's also one of our local resident spirits that is seen on all 3 floors, both residual and intelligent activity. We've also had, we have a lot of mob mountain justice here. And so we've had at least 6 inmates who have been taken out of the jail by mobs of people masking up, breaking into the jail and taking the inmate to different spots within the area and either executing or lynching them. We do believe that there were more, but we do know of at least 6 we've got the newspaper articles and death certificates of. We've also had sheriffs who have spent time behind bars there themselves. So a lot of history associated with this jail from the time that the doors opened in 1904 until they closed in 2008. The jailers, they did live on site up until the 70s. And so you had whole families that were raised in there. And so you got to remember, whenever these folks were busting in and breaking into the jail and taking the inmates out, they were also breaking into the sheriffs and jailers' homes as well. Because that was on the entire bottom floor of the jail. It was built the way it was and when it was, because in 1904, there was an influx of people that came to the area for the coal and timber boom. And so the county wanted to show that they meant business when it came to law and order. So they went and they mined this local sandstone and built the jail into this castle shape. Where they did there in the county seat, which is right there in the center of the county. So a lot of history surrounding that, a lot of stories that our spirits like to tell. Spirits in there like to talk, and they like to let you know they're there. They're intelligent. They're aware of what's going on. And if you come in and you want to have a conversation, I mean, not so much what did you do and why are you in here, that sort of thing. But if you really listen and let them talk, they'll share their stories, and it's something that I'm honestly amazed every day when I go in there at just how much they want to do it.
Okay, I want to say, whenever we went, we got to go visit the Scott County Jail, and it was, one thing I liked about it, one thing I did like about it compared to other places, sometimes when you go, sometimes you'll go to places that are haunted, it's nasty, dirty, and you're like, there's asbestos in my teeth now, this feels comfortable, you're in a jail, but it feels comfortable, so I remember, though, getting there, and I didn't so much have an uneasy feeling or an uncomfortable feeling. I was like, this is cool. We're checking out some stuff. And I really didn't, like Antoinette was, really enjoying a lot of stuff that she was getting, the pictures and stuff. And you guys are so great as Ghost Tour to kind of, you guys are wonderful hosts, but it wasn't until Christy, let's go up to this jail cell and see if we can get something, and I'm like, okay, cool, let's go up there and check it out. And she had all the gadgets out, and she started asking questions. The light goes up. Okay, kind of weird. Does it again, gets a little more crazier, the light and stuff, things are blinking. And then, we're inside the cell, just me and her, and we're sitting there, and something in the back corner starts to move. And these cells aren't huge.
No.
They're not huge. So I'm sitting there, and I can hear something getting off of the bed, getting off of the and I'm like, what the hell's really I'm looking at her like, you hear this? It's coming. It's coming towards us. And it kept getting louder, and it literally sounded like somebody getting off the bed, getting off the bunk, getting down, and coming closer to us. And I was like, holy shit. And I couldn't take it. I freaked out. I said, let's get the hell out. Let's go. So I come running, hauling ass out of that jail cell. And there's actually a recording of me freaking out, hauling ass out of there. How long are we going to wait till it gets us? It was so crazy, dude. And I've heard, you know, other stories. People, like I said, you know, Vinny Vineyard was on, you know, last episode, and they did an investigation. He was like, he called me the next day, and he's like, yeah, that place is haunted as hell. And I said, I told you, dude. I said, I told you, that is one little haunted little place right there.
It is. And like I said, it's amazing. I first investigated it back in 2014. That was before they got the tourism grant and were able to fix it up. They got that in 2017. When I investigated, I never would have dreamed that I would be, you know, running the museum and stuff out of there. But it was active then when I was there. The drunk tank was the most active at that point, and we were getting audible. We were hearing it with our own ears, so we were getting disembodied crying and sobbing. It wasn't until Chris and I got the keys to the jail, I think about 2.5 months before we actually opened to the public. And so we spent a lot of time sitting in there, talking to them, telling them what we were going to be doing, and really kind of seeing what causes them to interact. And we found that music was something